Hello and welcome to the Six Sales podcast. This is Mike Nicholson from Six Sales. Today I'm going to be speaking to Paul Wright, who is the head of advertising at Uber. Paul, how are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Welcome. Looking forward to our conversation. I spend a lot of time and money with Uber, both eat and ride. So
good. Nice to meet a customer again.
Yeah, you're number one. You've probably got a picture of me, I would imagine, in the office, haven't you? Our number one user.
Always, yes.
Yeah.
What's your rating? Do you know what your rating is?
Oh, it's pretty high. I'm a very polite, agreeable kind of guy.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
So just to kick us off, could you tell us a little bit about your first job in media and then bring us up to date from that job to where you are today, please?
Blimey, have we got long enough? My first ever job in media was as a sales assistant at Sky Channel, as it was then, before it became Sky, before it became BSkyB. So it was a pan-European cable channel, which was doing Spider-Man repeats, and WWF, which is now WWE, but it was WWF then. So that's wrestling.
World Wildlife Fund, isn't it?
Yeah. World Wrestling Federation.
Okay.
Which is a big thing.
I can see why they changed it. It's confusing.
Yeah. But they've been around for a while. So anyway, we were basically the ads team within this pan-European team, which was then going to turn into what Sky became. And then we worked on the launch of Sky when it went from that one pan-European channel and turned into 4 UK-focused channels, doubling the number of channels in the UK, which seems remarkable now. We had 8, and it was a big moment.
Yeah.
And then that was just this wonderful journey of a startup. I mean, I think a lot of people probably listening to this probably don't remember Sky as perhaps as much of a startup as it is the big corporate it is now. But it was a really scrappy business that, won the Premier League when no one thought they were going to get the Premier League, and introduced pay TV and lots of other things. So it was a really interesting company to work for and fascinating on the back of it, and met some great people in that process. So that was the start of my sort of crazy journey. And prior to that, I'd been at a bank in Baker Street, which wasn't necessarily my ultimate career goal. But I come out of university and the old milk run, as they used to call it, where the big corporates tried to grab graduates. I was sort of sold in this vision of working in banking. And I'd been there, and I'd been basically sorting checks into alphabetical order, which is sort of quite a tough gig initially. Yeah. And then I ended up on doing stuff on mortgages and stuff. But it was interesting to understand that, and then sort of making this jump into media, and I haven't really looked back since. Okay. And then after Sky, a whole wonderful journey of startups and busts, boom and bust, I think would be a fair way of describing it. So I worked in digital in the early days of Sky, and the first websites that they produced were Sky Sports and Sky News. Then it was the boom time, that crazy period where the internet was going to change everything. We're sort of in a similar place with AI maybe, but we'll see how we go. And that was interesting. And then I got approached to run a team for a startup that raised $100 million and managed to spend it quite effectively, and then went bust in 2 years. And then sort of went through a variety of other startups, including my own, which we sold, and another couple of startups that I helped sell as well. So it was sort of that phase in the early 2000s where businesses had made bets on some things, and they were trying to people were trying to build advertising businesses, and I guess we were the center of that. And that was fun. And then did some consulting and various other things. And then went back to Sky, ironically, having sold them a company, which is sort of an interesting experience, because obviously it could turn into... You're on an earn-out. Yeah. You're on an earn-out, and you're like seen as this entrepreneur, but obviously you're coming back into a very corporate environment. It's quite an interesting experience. I did a couple of years there.
Interesting is one word for it.
Yeah, it is one word for it. I think it was it was a very different culture to the Sky that I'd left years ago, because it had turned into it's still a great company, but it was just much more organized corporately and all that type of stuff. So, being a startup entrepreneur into that was a different experience. I left after a couple of years, and then took a break, and then did some other things. And then I had sort of this moment where someone rang me up and said, look, we need someone with grey hair to help us with some digital stuff. And I'm like, well, I've just about got hair, but what it is left of it is grey, so that's helpful. And it was Omnicom, and it was the OMD team, and it was like, can you come and run digital for us? Because we need to grow our digital skill sets relative to what client demands are. So that was fun. So I became the first CDO there, firstly of OMD and then OMG as a whole. And that was just fascinating, having always been on the sales side, to get back to get the understanding of what the buy side works. And I've always appreciated that actually ever since, because it was just one of those wondrous moments. Because it was just when Facebook was becoming quite a big platform. Google were obviously reasonably well established then, but there was still lots to learn around search and all that. And
you often hear, sorry, just to jump in there, you often hear of people going from the agency side to the sales side.
Yes.
You don't hear about as many going the other way.
Correct.
So
yes.
what was your biggest surprise or learning or shock or going into the media agencies that you'd spent your life selling into, and now you are one? What was eye-opening for you?
Well, I think the great thing is very, very smart people, great ideas. The sort of creativity of it was very impressive. I think the challenging thing was the demands made by clients upon them, and I guess the business model in itself, which was evolving at that stage, because it was predominantly based at that stage purely on a commission model. And how did you make money against that relative to the increasing complexity of the media that they were expected to do? It was a model sort of designed for a couple of TV channels, a few print businesses, and a few other things, not for a long tail of the digital world and Facebook and everything else. So that was the challenging part. But the creativity, the people, great. The thought processes. I think it was just one of the things I found actually about agency life was, particularly at senior level, was you just got buffeted every week. You started a week thinking you're going one direction and ended up going somewhere else because there was a pitch or there was a client that needed some help or whatever. So it was great from a job perspective, but it was sort of slightly
hard to plan your own time.
Yeah, slightly odd in terms of you just no idea what was going to happen, and whether you suddenly had to go in on a weekend to try and sort out a pitch that was happening.
I suppose you have to have a certain sort of personality to deal with that as well, right? Because some people like structure and knowing how their week's going to unfold. And I plan on a Sunday and I've got my week planned out, and I know on Thursday I'm doing the podcast, and on Friday I'm playing tennis. I like to have that kind of structure, and I'll do a lot of the client work sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, and And if all of that gets thrown around all the time, then it's difficult. But it's probably is it exciting as well, though?
It's exciting, but it's difficult. I think it creates a lot of demands on your life as a whole, and particularly when you've also got, in my case, I was always amazed by the sheer volume of media owners trying to be in contact with you. Yeah. And you want to give them time and thing, because there's obviously interesting stuff going on. But when you've got, I don't know, I think we worked out we had about 2012, whatever, we had about 300 people trying to sell to us at any one time. And Google was one of them, and Facebook was one, like that's really difficult to manage. That sort of filtering of opportunity and understanding and all the things that go on. So it's a very fascinating world of just lots of stuff being thrown at you. And I think I admire anyone who works in agencies on that basis, because I think it's a challenge to deal with that.
Just to dig into that, 300 companies at any one time trying to sell to you, that's probably escalated. The number's probably bigger now, right?
Probably is, yeah. I would think so.
If you look at the Lumascape, and of course, there's only so much time in the day, and suddenly now you're doing a client pitch, and now you're helping that client with something else, and you've got that selling happening. You've been on both sides of the fence. So what advice would you give to people that are perhaps trying to get some sort of attention and airtime and the opportunity to pitch inside an agency, when there's that sort of constraints on the agency's time and the sheer volume of people that are trying to get their attention?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you have to be very focused. I think what I saw didn't work was people just coming in and just doing a sort of spray and pray approach. That sort of,
buy Pret, come in and sell to the agency.
Yeah, it works to some degree if you're a big brand that's established within the agency, because that's what they want. They want to sort of, we need to find out about the latest of X, Y, Z media owner. But if you're a new brand, it's a pretty difficult thing to do. So I think what I've learned in my time is that you have to just find one or two brands who could engage specifically with the offering you have, build case studies around them, work closely with the teams that are going to be engaged on that, and then build out a longer term strategy from there. Because otherwise you can spin your wheels a lot.
But getting so building case studies and working with the team sounds like great advice, but getting their attention in the first place, if you're a relatively small company, let's say, versus your Googles and your Facebooks and your Amazons and all the rest of it, that's quite hard.
Quite hard. But if you come in with a very specific understanding, well, as much of you can as an understanding of what their clients are trying to achieve and how you're going to solve that problem, that helps. Too many times, and I've done this on myself in previous times, you come in with a sort of maybe too broad approach that doesn't really explain how your platform, product, ad tech solution, whatever it is going to help that client. Yeah. So I think a little bit of finessing. I remember talking to one guy who came in and he did this presentation to me, and I was like, thanks, mate. Can I just give you some advice on this? Because it was very, very, his issue was that he'd come in with a very Americanized presentation. And it was, we're working with these great brands in the US. And I'm
here's the map, here's the logo.
Here's the maps and the logos. There is a standard presentation that comes out of a lot of American-based tech companies sometimes. And it just doesn't resonate. And I said to him, look, I'd do this, I'd focus on this, and just get that emotional connection back that's lacking because you're talking corporate speak from a US perspective. Yeah.
So at 6Oz, we work with a lot of companies that are trying to get the attention of agencies and brands. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've noticed is if the seller, shall we say, has been able to clearly identify a problem statement that's in the words of you when you had your OMD hat on. So this is a problem, and this is how you would talk about the problem internally, and this is how we solve it. And you can do that in a simple, quick, easy way, then that tends to work a lot better because that problem statement becomes a LinkedIn headline. It becomes a headline in your email.
Exactly.
It becomes a conversation over a beer if you just bump into somebody at an event or whatever. But a lot of companies don't do that, do they? They sort of say, "Oh, we got all of this stuff, and we could do all of this stuff, and do you want some?"
Yes.
And it's too general. It's
too general,
broad.
Just hoping to catch stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, that problem statement, finding the problem statement, it is a bit like being a startup. What's the thing you're solving, and just that single line that you may have, your elevator pitch, is sort of really critical.
Yeah.
And I think particularly in technology, where most of the customers you're talking to may not have a deep understanding of the technology you're trying to sell, you've got to make it really, really clear what the benefit of the tech is, rather than go into the details of how the tech works, which is often what I used to see as
stage 2 or 3, isn't it?
Someone would go in and go, "Oh, here's how the tech works." I'm like, great, but I haven't got time to understand tech. I want to understand what the benefit to my customer is.
Yeah. And not necessarily from media, I hasten to add, but general companies that try to sell to me, the state of the outreach is really poor. I mean, really poor. That you think this doesn't look like it's relevant to me. I don't understand what you do, who you are, what problems you're solving. It's templated. It looks like it's just crap, right? And if you get too much of that, and you've got 300 companies trying to sell to you, then you've got your clients, then you've got your teams, then you've got your colleagues, then you've got your boss. For anybody to get attention in the inbox with stuff like that is almost impossible, I'd say.
Yeah.
Which is, but going back to that though, it's all about the people again as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Uber have obviously hired you because you know a lot of people and you can knock on a lot of doors, and you're the familiar face that will open those doors up because you have relationships, and obviously a lot of media companies know how to do that, hire the right people, and then you open the right doors. But it is tough. I feel that could be a whole podcast episode in its own right. Yes. So moving on. So everyone will be familiar with Uber from a rides point of view, and people like me will be very familiar with Uber as an eats product. But for those that maybe aren't too familiar with the business model, who are Uber advertising? What are you guys doing?
So I guess if you think about us there's three specific areas that we work, and very different ad solutions for each of those areas. So the first one is the one where we started, which was in our marketplace. How do you get attention, I guess, as you're a restaurant partner, if you're a restaurant delivery partner. So when people go onto the Uber Eats app, they will look, and something like 60% of people don't know what they're going to choose when they go onto their app.
Right.
They just know that they want a delivery. And then the question is obviously what's local to you, all that type of stuff. So that comes promoted
Yeah.
through. So there's a whole sponsored listings business that on the one side of the house, and that's the one that we started with initially. And that's a pretty obvious, straightforward model from everyone's point of view, and it does link back into sales and all the other stuff that goes with that. The next area, which is, I think, very, very interesting, is this rise of sort of convenience delivery, where you're talking about grocery deliveries or whatever. Now, that area then opens up a whole relationship potentially with a lot of the FMCG brands, where they're looking at a variety of ways of engaging with people. I was talking to one recently, and they were saying, look, in a delivery environment, the attachment rate is much lower than it would be in a physical environment. So, if you're a soft drink, you'd expect, say, I don't know, something like 50% of every restaurant meal ordered would have a soft drink part of it. In a delivery environment, that's often lower. So what they're trying to do is obviously make sure that you order your soft drink with your delivery, rather than go, oh, I've got one in the fridge, I think, or whatever, or your ice cream or whatever else it happens to be. And I think that's where we come in, because we can help with that, and that's the prompting of a user.
So is that I'm thinking about I use that as well for deliveries, and it's super handy. And I think that really kicked off during COVID and the pandemic, didn't it, when people can get out, and then it became a habit. But is that, I'm just about to check out, and it says here's some other things you might have forgotten, or
there's combination. Yeah, we have things called post-checkout ads, which allows that. We have other ad units that sit and prompt people within the shopping experience, whether it's sponsored items, which you see on a lot of retail media networks, or billboards and those types of things that sort of signposting. I mean, there's lots of signposting, and we like to call it signposting across your buying experience, so you can be reminded, oh yeah, I need to get that can or that product or whatever else to do it. But then on top of that, what we're finding is, and this is the other area, the newest area for us, is what we call journey ads, which is what we put into the Rides app, the Uber Rides app. Because if you're an FMCG, there's a really big opportunity to communicate to people in a brand way on that platform, as well as doing the more performance-based stuff we just talked about.
Yeah.
And that's become very interesting for a lot of brands, and that's really growing. Whether it's targeting people going to a restaurant and encouraging them when they get to their restaurant to purchase something, similar thing. So we're sort of this online environment with the existing Uber Eats, but also potentially an offline activation as well.
So does the advertising get triggered or in some way informed by the destination somebody's put in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to, let's take it, keep it simple. You're going to an airport. We know that if you're going to an airport, there's several things you're going to do. One is probably going to be a slightly longer ride. Normally is. I think our average Uber ride in the UK is around about 25 minutes. Slightly longer ride. But equally, you will also know when you get there, you're going to have to go through duty free. You've got no choice. Because that's the way the airport's set up.
Park is built straight into it. Yeah.
But that's very interesting from a lot of brands, and we've run lots of activity around this, where people have said, well, we know they're going through duty free, so we can create a signpost to say to people, buy this fragrance or buy this product or whatever else. And that's proven very successful. We did a campaign with...
There's also an element of dwell time, right? Because you know that you're going to be in an airport, you've got to be there 2 hours early, you're going to be sitting around. And so there's that, I may as well buy something because it just kills some time.
So I think there's this whole thing about, it's moments, but it's also, to your point, that moment where you've got dead time or whatever that you're going to need to fill.
I'm pretty officious with my calendar, but I would never put in something to do while hanging around at the airport. It's just sort of time that suddenly is upon you, right?
It is, yes. So we do that, or we've done, and other ones we've done. We did a campaign with Boots last summer where they were involved with Pride. So we did Uber's Pride weekends across 3 cities. So if you got into your Uber on Pride weekend, you get a Pride promotion which linked back to Boots' association with Pride, right? So you have these wonderful ways of communicating with people in this moment. And I think the thing we find is that dead time, because you're looking at your screen, you're waiting for an Uber to come, you're in the car, you're checking on your Uber to see how long it's going to take to get to your destination. So you have that attention.
Yeah.
And that attention has been really interesting. And we're seeing the campaigns we run in rides, I think the average globally is about 90 seconds engagement. It's actually a lot higher in the UK. It's high, up to about 200 seconds of time spent in the ads.
Okay.
And we're only running a single ad. So there is no competition. There is no programmatic stuff going on in the background that's just changing everything. It's one advertiser, one trip. And that, I think, is very powerful in a world where there's a lot of noise out there. You have that engagement. You have that time spent.
So what's the most important trigger for which ad you serve? Is it the person? Is it the place they're going to? Is it the price somebody's willing to pay? Is it all of the above?
Well, I think by definition, the intent of the consumer is the most important. Are you going to an airport? Are you going to a bar? Are you going to a music venue? Are you, any of those things suddenly creates an understanding of what that consumer is going to do.
Yeah.
And then with that, you can then sort of take it and build things. So we've done stuff targeting, say, tourists, where we can determine where a tourist is in London. And then obviously that can then give them a specific message when they arrive at an airport and they get in an Uber. So,
what about reverse trip? What about coming back from an airport home after you've been away?
Yes.
For grocery shopping or eating out or
and we've done campaigns where people, there is that sort of assumed behavior that people do come back and then they want to get something delivered to them just as they arrive home.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a very interesting area for us this year as we develop the product, because I think that's another. We've talked to a few brands about that as a sort of.
You need milk and bread at least, right?
Yes.
When you come back from a trip.
Yes, exactly.
And then something to eat that night. And
something to eat and all that type of stuff. And people do. I think anecdotally, people do that when they're on their way home. They might even order a delivery to be picked up. A restaurant delivery to be delivered at that stage as well. If they've got nothing in.
Yeah, I love those moments of downtime. That idea I was telling you before we press record about. One of the campaigns I was most proud of was for American Express when I was working at the Telegraph, and it was a video campaign. But I worked with an outdoor company to deliver. It was called Telegraph TV, so it was like a rolling news updates throughout the day. And if you went onto the Telegraph website, you could see the latest news in video. But we projected that onto the Transvision screen at Victoria and Waterloo and places like that, because when you get to the station and you sort of gaze up blankly at the sea of orange LCD and think, oh, where's my train? Oh, it's delayed. That's, again, another moment that you can't possibly, even the most officious, brilliant person in the world can't say, that's 5 minutes, I'll do this.
Yeah.
It's just suddenly time that's upon you. And it worked really well. And the American Express client was blown away at how many downloads their ad got. And they wanted to, talk about doing more stuff. And I think that's what you're talking about here, isn't it? You've got a consumer at a point where they can't be doing something else. They're like, okay, and relax and sit like in the back of an Uber. So I use Ubers every other Saturday when I go to Sutton United, which has been painful this year, not because of Uber, I hasten to add, but it's been a tough season, should we say.
Sorry, I'm a Forest fan. I'm with you.
You feel my pain. And it remembers that one of my top 2 destinations is Sutton United, and and that's great. And the parking's hard around Sutton, and I like a beer, so Uber is if my wife won't drop me off, then Uber is my preferred mode of transport. But I'm wondering in the future with the advancements of machine learning and AI and the technological advancements that we're having, is if it could predict one day, and not just me, obviously it's not going to go, right, Mike always goes to Sutton when they're at home, but at scale there must be loads of people doing similar journeys on a regular basis. So could you know in advance that, like an hour in advance? So let's say, I'll use me as an example, but obviously it would be more than me. So let's say at 1 o'clock when Sutton United are at home, I come on, I open the app and I say, right, I need an Uber, and I get the next available Uber to take me to Sutton United. Could it know at 12 o'clock that I'm likely to do that because I've done it so many times, and then let me know what the Uber availability is looking like in advance? It's quite busy at the moment. You might want to order it a bit earlier if you want to go there. Is that something that might...
I mean, I think I can see why you would want that. I'm not sure we're there yet. I mean, I think, we use a lot of machine learning and AI within the app to obviously deliver people's, expectations, whether it's estimating time of arrival at events and all that type of stuff. But I don't think we've got to that intuitive level yet. And I think we just want to make the app as convenient as possible for people just to jump on it and go, I need to go to Sutton United and get me there. We have obviously added reserve into the platform recently, so that's important as part of the ability to book in advance. Yeah. So that's there. So I'm not saying we will never do these things, but for the moment our focus is on just giving a great user experience for when people could jump on the app.
Yeah. Okay. And what sort of brands are you seeing engaging with you for Eats and Wright?
A wide range of brands, from technology through to streaming companies. Streaming companies is obviously an interesting one. Anyone in the entertainment space, because particularly on the Eats side, if someone has ordered an Eats to be delivered to their home, the next thing, what they're going to do when that arrives, are they going to watch a new series on, whatever, and those types of things. So I think streaming is a very interesting one. But we do everything from high-end fashion to events to, we've run campaigns for big retailers, driving people to their stores. We've done fashion brand like Farm Rio, which is a Brazilian fashion brand, which is doing a pop-up in Liberties, and we just geofence around Liberties so that anyone going there would see what the Farm Rio store was offering. Obviously, the big restaurant partners we work with consistently, the big CPGs, it's one of the great things about my job, and I joke about it across my team, is that I can go one day to a high-end fashion brand, and next day I can be talking to a CPG, and the following day I can be talking to a restaurant partner. It's really varied, because I think the beauty is, one, the audience that Uber has is an interesting one anyway. But you have these moments to capture anyone who goes in at Uber Lux or Uber Pets or is buying from Waitrose. And that's a pretty varied opportunity.
It's really varied, yeah. And do you have people either in your team or in a different team that are literally calling door to door at local restaurants as well, or one-off restaurants, to try and get them to sell their food through Uber, but then also advertise and have it promoted?
Yeah, a lot of the small restaurants use our ad product, of course, and that's part of what we do. We have hundreds of thousands of restaurants on the platform, so yes, that's part of it. Most of that's sponsored listings. That's fine, but yeah, we have a lot of engagement with brands, restaurants, convenience deliveries, whatever. There's all sorts of things going on at any one time, so it's a fascinating setup.
Yeah. So how do you structure your teams then? Because there's a wide variety there.
Yes, good question.
Different clients clients essentially that you can go after, and you've got Ride and Eats, and then you've got agency and brand, let's say, and direct. So how do you structure your teams?
So we structured this 3 core teams. Four if we include. I'll talk about the 4th in a minute. So the first one is restaurant partners. That's very much, the core of the business where it started, and that's looking after those partners, making sure that we help them with their sponsored listings, products, all that type of stuff. Then we have the FMCG team, so that's focused on all of the FMCG brands, whether it's a Mars, Unilever, Coke, whatever, and engaging with that group across all of the different services we have. And then we have, I suppose, what we call strategic verticals, but actually anybody else would probably call non-endemic. So the opportunity for non-endemic brands to engage with our customers. And that group is very much focused on talking to clients and agencies about brand opportunities, like the journey ads we've been talking about. And then on top of that, we also have an agency partnerships team that works on the partnerships with the agencies as we grow. And within that, you obviously have very different skill sets, because on the sponsor listings, it's very performance driven, whereas on the non-endemics, it's perhaps much more brand driven. So you have to have teams with different skill sets within the team, I suppose.
So an individual in the team, let's say working on the FMCG vertical, would they be agency facing and client, depending on the particular client? So they do a bit of both.
Bit of both. Yeah, you have to. I mean, and also I think when you look at the FMCG groups, and I was talking to a client this morning about this, is even within the FMCG groups now, you've got focused e-commerce teams that are separate to the brand teams, and they have separate budgets and all the associated, and they're very performance driven, looking at ROAS and those types of things, whereas the brand teams might be looking at slightly different metrics. And that's a real big growth area as particularly convenience delivery has grown. They're sort of starting to realize that commerce skill sets are very critical.
Is it continuing to grow even post-pandemic?
Yeah. And I think, I think it's a sort of part of a lifestyle change. I think, we've got a very strong heritage with, obviously, in the UK with all the different wonderful, supermarket brands and all that type of stuff. It's a very competitive marketplace, but people do want, their grocery shops to be delivered to them, and they want to just do it in an app and easily.
So I use that service a lot. It's super handy. Even just I live in a village. The local Sainsbury's local and Co-op are probably a 5-minute walk, or a 30-second drive, but parking down there is a pain.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to just go, you come to me, and you pay the extra or whatever.
Yeah.
So is it Uber One, the
membership program? Yeah.
For the thing that's for people that eat things and go places, is that Uber One?
Yeah, it's a membership program.
Yeah. And what's the? Is there an advertising opportunity there, or is it just?
Well, we do. Yeah, I mean, Uber One is geared towards our sort of heavy users, I suppose, and we do have the ability to just target Uber One users if people want to. Okay. And that's an interesting new area for us. We're at early stages of working that out, but that's definitely the case.
Why would somebody want to target those in particular?
Probably because in essence, if they're heavier users, they'll probably do more volume, and therefore there's a bigger opportunity potentially with them. But it's just another opportunity within, I guess similar to what Amazon do with Prime or whatever.
Yeah. Going back to the conversation we had at the start, we were talking about how media sellers can get the attention of media agencies. So what do you tell your team? I'm assuming it's got something to do with case studies, because that was the advice.
Well, I mean, we do. Yeah, we've done some great case studies. We have a lot of case studies now.
Is that a door opener?
It's a door opener. I mean, we also have this wonderful opportunity to show ads where a lot of our B2B customers work and live, right? So we do that as well. We actually use the product. So if you go, the best example is Cannes. So if you go to Cannes this year, you'll get in an Uber and you'll get an Uber ad from Uber. Yeah. That helps a little bit. I mean, it's the best demonstration of the product, probably if it's physically in someone's hand.
We've got a data set basically inside Uber advertising. That's every media agency person in the country.
Well, no, I don't think we have to have the data set of the person. I think we can have a data set of offices and stuff like that. That's fine. But or geofences more logically.
Okay, cool. So what's exciting? We're recording this in March 2024, just in case somebody's listening far into the future. What's coming from Uber advertising this year? What's exciting?
So,
what are you most looking forward to?
So the area we're really focusing on is getting video into the platform. And now we've done it on the post-checkout product, so that's now video enabled. So you can have a short video on the back end of that. That's proved very successful. The next one, which will happen next quarter, will be video, and video in the main journey ads. When we talk about video, we don't talk about video in perhaps the same way that others will do, because again, going back to your point about this downtime, we see video as a very interesting opportunity for brands within our environment, because it's not just about necessarily a 30-second pre-roll. It could be something more than that.
Branded content.
Branded content could be. And I think that's where we've got to work out what it is. The way the Uber app works is that obviously the first screen, which is the screen we when you're waiting to confirm your Uber, we place an ad in there, and at the moment it's a tile. We will place a video clip in there, so like a mini trailer. Won't be clickable, it'll just be a little teaser. And then when you go into the main app, i.e. when the driver is confirmed and they're on their way to you, you will then have the opportunity to run video from there. Now, as we said earlier, the average Uber ride is around 20 to 25 minutes, depending on which country you're in. 20, 25 minutes, there's quite a lot of opportunity there to put in an extended video if someone wanted to, or link to an extended video from there. And we think
how do you get the targeting right for that content? So if it was a mini piece of content, for example, branded content, how do you figure out what that person, let's use me as an example again. Why not? I'm on my way to Saturday night. It's going to take me about 15 minutes. How do you figure out who I am to a sufficient degree to know that maybe I might want to see a roundup of League Two that day?
I think, we variety of ways, but the obvious one is just on the targeting of where you're going. That's one thing.
Yeah.
So if you're going to Sutton United, or if you're going to City Ground, or wherever you're going, that by definition means you have some interest in football.
Yeah.
And then we can do simple waypoint targeting based on that. Yeah. That's the simplest way. There are other things we do on top of that to help define targeting, but it literally comes down to that, really. Or if you're a luxury brand.
Do you accept betting advertising?
No.
No. Okay.
We take lotteries, but we won't take fixed odds or casinos. Okay.
They're probably pretty gutted about that. Sadly, away to football.
Well, I mean, I think the thing we have at Uber and is the principle got to do the right thing. We looked at a couple of areas. Firstly, we don't take any advertising going to hospitals or clinics or anything like that. And that's a deliberate policy from us. Not a policy that we had to do, but one we chose to do because we felt that it's the right thing to do, because we don't really want to be serving ads to people as they're on their way to whatever they may be at a hospital.
Yeah. And
we took a similar view with gambling, is that, it's fine, but there's plenty of places they can advertise, but we want to focus on doing the right thing. So we thought we'd focus it not on that and take the opportunities from other brands.
Very cool.
But that's, that will continue. We'll keep reviewing that. But the data points are still there, and they're still, the one I always think is like, people going to Bond Street or luxury users of Uber. There are, the car type's another targeting point. So when you think about Uber Green, we have brands just targeting people on Uber Green because that's the electric fleet. Mm. And that's worked really well for those brands. We've had people targeting Uber Pets, which is the pet opportunity. A lot of people aren't aware of this if you haven't got pets, but you can get an Uber that specifically will allow you to take your dog or your cat with you.
I thought it was going to be like groceries for pets. Like
No. So if you want to go dog-friendly cars, that type of thing, and that's very successful. We've had brands specifically target because they know.
Is that within the same Uber app?
Yeah,
it's just a different tab.
Yeah.
I've not noticed that. I've got pets, but I just
it's there. It's Uber Pets, so it's Uber Green, Uber Pets, Uber Lux. So there's all these different brands, which by definition also help us identify a customer or consumer.
This might be slightly outdated now because I think I just assumed that Uber will be everywhere I go. But I remember on a number of business trips landing somewhere and thinking, I don't even know if Uber operates here. Did you ever, or have you ever run campaigns yourself to people going to airports to remind them that you are in Germany, France, Spain, whatever, just so people think at the other end, I'll get an Uber then in that case? Because I've landed I think Germany, I think maybe it was for De Mexico. I was like, I don't even know if the first time I was like, I don't even know if Uber are out here.
I don't think we've done anything specific. I mean, I think if you look at what we're doing in, say, the UK, it's much clearer when you go to Heathrow where the Uber pickup points are and all that type of stuff. And I think that's sort of broadly part of where we're going, is just making it clear where those things are and working with those destinations to be, helpful to consumers.
Yeah, that video product sounds very exciting. If you can get that right in terms of the right content to the right person, that
exactly,
you've suddenly got 25 minutes, let's say, the right piece of content at that moment. Why not? Because I've got literally nothing else to do.
Yeah, so we've talked to a couple of brands who said, well, could we run a 5-minute video? I said, well, of course you can if you want to. I mean, you've just got to tease them to get them to press play and set it up. But I think that, we're really excited about that. And I think beyond that, we'll keep developing. We're constantly innovating. There's more and more there's other products coming for all of the categories. We just talked to all those 3 teams. Some to more specifically, so that there's a sort of pre-checkout opportunity to make sure, which is a bit like a basket and a POS in a supermarket. Same principle. Yeah. So there's things we're going to test. And then on top of that, I think the big thing for us is just to develop our products and sort of work in line with the industry as a whole, as retail media, commerce media networks start becoming even more prevalent than they are now.
So do you think of yourself, or do other people think of you as a retail media network? Because I hadn't really considered that until you said that earlier. I was like, actually, I suppose.
Well, we are. I think we are. I mean, I think we are, and some. I think that's the thing. I mean, I think when you have the journey of the rides product, you're a sort of a different player than a pure e-com player in that sense, but it's still first-party data driven. And there is a transaction. The transaction is between the consumer and Uber and the Uber driver to get you to a place. So it's slightly different to other commerce platforms. But I guess we're a bit of that. We're a bit of everything in that context. But it's always an interesting challenge. Going back to your point about agencies, is how do you classify yourselves? Because agencies and the clients often want to put people into very specific groupings.
Yeah. What bucket do we put you in?
Whichever ones makes the most sense. I don't mind. I mean, I think commerce. I think this wider term commerce media actually becomes more relevant, because I think retail media has been very focused on those brands who are doing very, very sort of high volume transactions. But actually, commerce media allows a wider scope of first-party driven transactional data being used.
Yeah, I think the suggestive purchases in Uber Eats grocery, is it Uber Eats grocery? Is that what you would call it?
Uber Eats, yeah.
Uber Eats, yeah, is really powerful, because the number of times I've known the primary thing that I want to order, and I think, I better get a few things around it because I can't just order that. And then there's, actually that's a good idea. Like, and obviously a lot of it's based on what you've ordered before, so it knows that. But if you can then start sort of throwing in, and have you got your cans of Lucozade? Go on then, why not whack it in? Interesting times. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Nice to find out a little bit more about what's going on the business side of Uber, since I'm a heavy user. I think
we'll be targeting you at Sutton.
Absolutely, I'm sure. So I expect to see a little video of you saying hello next time. Next time I'm on my way to Sutton United and going, hiya, that's right, we're watching you. Nice one, Paul. Thanks very much for being on 6 Hours Podcast.
A pleasure. Thank you so much.